Hi, everyone. Today we're going to talk about the role of a supervisor and the role of a coach because recently I had a free 30-minute consultation with a prospective client and they told me about their situation. So they have a more or less finished thesis, but it's all over the place. And they thought that their supervisor would be more supportive in helping them to figure out the red thread and the argument of the thesis. And then that person also got a feedback from the supervisor that said, you don't engage with theory on a deep level, right? Like your theoretical engagement is off, it's not there. And now this student is really worried that they're not going to be positively evaluated once the thesis goes into review. And so they reached out to me asking how I can help them, right? And they told me during the talk that they had a different kind of idea of what a supervisor would do, that it would be a much closer sort of one-on-one work with each other, that they would brainstorm together, that, it would be like a real conversation that they would have. And in the end, they figured out, no, the supervisor just wants like submitted drafts and then they're going to get feedback on that. But the feedback is only as good as the draft is good, right? So like that's a huge problem with most supervisors. They don't really know how to give effective feedback, how to give feedback that really moves this piece of writing further along the line in a qualitative sense, right? Usually they give a lot of comments on the side that then say something like, this could be explained a little bit better, or how about you read XYZ scholar's work, and you're like, okay, these are great ideas, but like, how does it exactly help me? And so this is usually where a coach comes in, but I do want to give you one caveat, right? Because I did have people in the past reaching out to me thinking that a coach does intellectual work for them, right? And that's not how it works. You do need to do the reading. You do need to do the thinking by yourself. You need to produce something. And once you've produced something, we can have a look at it and we can have the constructive conversation that you're missing from your supervisory relationship, right? But a coach can't do the thinking for you, right? So if you say, well, my thesis is lacking theoretical depth, so can you add that to it? Then the answer is no, I can't, right? That's not my role. That's not what I'm doing. And you can't outsource your intellectual work to somebody else. But what you can do is to have a constructive conversation, right? A coach can help you to understand where that theoretical depth is missing and outline strategies for you to engage with that text or that theory in such a way that it feels fulfilling to you, right? With different kinds of brainstorming techniques, sort of back and forth argumentations that you can practice with a coach, things like that. That really helps you get along. But you need to know that even if you hire somebody, right, like a coach or even a developmental editor, you still need to do your own work. You still need to be able to put in the hours, put in the energy, and your creative and intellectual juices in order to move your thesis or your writing along, right? But a coach helps you because they're usually much more structured than a supervisor, right? A supervisor is an expert in their field. They can give you ideas of what other scholars to look at, what to read, what other theories could be interesting. They have a much better command of those theories, obviously. And a coach or a developmental editor really looks at how does this piece of text work for a reader who's generally educated and interested in this topic, but looks at it more from sort of like the reader side. So does this text work? Does it have a proper introduction? Is the argument clearly laid out? Is the argument backed up by evidence? Is the evidence clear, right? Like, what is the relevance of this argument? Those are the questions that a coach looks at and really tries to understand from the reader's perspective and then give you feedback. And a coach usually also is able to give you different kinds of feedback, right? So like it could be structural, it could be a little bit mentoring around sort of like mental health, stress factors, stuff like that. There's a lot of things that conventional supervisors really feel uncomfortable about that coaches and developmental editors don't, right? They think that they need to look at you as sort of like this holistic person and look at all the aspects that are influencing your work on your manuscript. So that's something where coaches and developmental editors are really better. But like you do need both, right? You do need a supervisor, obviously. But if you feel that your supervisor isn't giving you the help that you need, isn't giving you the support that you need, and you have been dragging on this thesis for a very long time, then maybe you should be getting a coach. Maybe you should be reaching out to a developmental editor. So if you need help with your thesis, if you're at a point where you feel stuck, where you feel your supervisor doesn't give you the feedback that you need, reach out to me. I am taking one-on-one clients to work with them on their thesis and on the problems that they face.